In today's video, I'm going to show you how to edit your joint limits to make something move more realistically. So let's get started. You can see I have my selfie stick open up. If you remember that I brought these parts in, this bottom phone holder and the top holder already had a joint on it, and we always had to move them together. Well, now we want to get rid of that joint because I don't know where that joint actually is. So what we're going to do is over here, we're going to open up our joints, and you can see I already had it opened up. And it's probably going to be your very first one. It's going to be a slider. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to come down and I'm going to select delete. So I want to take that out of there. I want to put the joint back in, but I want to put the joint back in where I know the joint's going to be. So we're going to go back up to our joints and we're going to grab a slider and we'll go back to position. I'm going to have to rotate this around a little bit. We'll zoom out so you can see. And we'll zoom in. There's the end of it. So I'm going to grab that little end right there in that cylinder. I'm going to go back to my home view. And I'm going to put that slider right up here on the top. So it's going to go right up down inside of it. When I got where I want it, I'm going to hit OK. So now we need to go back and we need to edit this. So I know that this joint, these two are right on top of each other. So I'm going to go back down here to that slider. So now it's down on the bottom. I'm going to right click and I'm going to edit those joint limits. And here's my joint limits. And I want a min and a max. So I want both. And what I can do on this is I can actually grab this and I can slide this up and down that joint. So I grab that joint itself. I don't want to bring it all the way down. I want to bring it down, maybe somewhere down in here. I'm going to pick something nice and even. So let's say negative 0.125. I like that where it's going to go. We're going to hit OK. So now when I bring this down, it's only going to go down to that part. And it's only going to go up to where I have my max set. Right, so it's going to come out right at the end. Now I can change that. Now maybe I'll go back and I'll set that max because maybe I don't want it coming out all the way. And that max will say, let's just give that a little bit, minus 0.025. So now it's going to come down inside of it just a little bit. So now it's going to go down negative 1.25, and it's not going to come all the way out because I don't want it to come all the way out. So now we've taken care of that one. I'm going to look at my front view. And now I'm going to change where we have that revolute, where we have the two pieces, but I'm going to zoom in and you can kind of see that this piece right here is not really centered in here. And that was my revolute joint. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to find that revolute joint. I'm going to right click on it. I'm just going to edit that joint. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this over a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good. Negative 0.125. I kind of like that. So I'm going to leave that in there like that. I want to kind of center that up. Next thing is you can see my little knob here. I can pull it all the way out and I can rotate it. Remember, this has two joints. So I don't want this to come all the way out. Maybe only to right about here. So that is my cylinder joint. So let's right click on it and let's edit that. Oh, I don't want to edit joint. I want to edit the limits. So let's go back to cylinder, edit my limit joints. There we go. Now, remember I said it had two different ones. So it had rotation. So let's select rotation. Let's get a max and a min. I think I'm going to leave my min at 0 and we're going to make our max. We want this to spin 360 degrees. All right, so we can spin this 360 degrees. Let's go back to cylinder, edit my joint limit. This time we're going to pick the slider part. And I need a max and I need a min. And let's grab that joint right there and let's slide it in and out, see where we want to go. Well, that's a little bit too far right there. So right about here. So I'm going to say maybe negative 2.1. I'm going to like that. So we'll put that in there like that. So now this can go all the way out to 2.1. It's not coming all the way out. So I kind of like that right there. So let's go back to our home view. The next one is we know that this spins all the way around and we don't want that. We wanted to give it some kind of a realistic kind of view. So let's go and take a look at this. Let's look at the right side of this. I kind of like that angle right in there. And maybe this one I want to come straight out at me. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually reset that one. And that one, if I'm going to go back here, I'm going to turn all my joints on. So I'm going to go down here, object visibility. Let's turn all my joints on. So I'm going to put this right at 0. So now I want to go in and I want to change how this bar swings. And I don't want to go that far in either direction. So I'm going to do is I'm going to just put it down here at 0. And that's my revolute joint. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to right click, edit my joint limit. I need a maximum and a min. So let's see, I want to go back. If I grab this right here, this little thing and swing it back. Yeah, that looks a little bit too much. 40. Yeah, I think maybe we'll go 40 degrees. So I think in this direction, I'm going to go negative 40. If I move it in the other direction, I want it to go right over here, straight up and down. So 90. So I want 90 and negative 40. So let's type those two in. So we're going to go 90 and a negative 40. You'll hit OK. And now if you see, I can move my bar. It'll only go up so far, and it'll only go this direction about 40 degrees. Next, I'm going to show you how to make this piece slide in and out. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now, if you remember from my previous recording, we made this a rigid joint. And now I want this to slide out. So that joint right there is a rigid joint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to right click. And I'm going to edit that joint. And we're going to go to motion. And we want this to be a slider. We want this to slide in and out. So I'm going to hit OK. So we're going to change that to slider. So now you can see that this piece comes in and out. Well, we're going to actually set limits on that joint. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see what's going to happen. And we'll zoom up. Well, what I want to do is I want to pull this out. But to make it a little bit easier, if I'm pulling it out, you see how it always swings. So I want this to kind of stay in one spot. So what I'm going to do is that revolute joint, we're going to actually lock that. I'm going to try to get that right close to 0 before I do that. There we go. I'm going to come over to my revolute joint and I'm going to lock it. That way, when I'm sliding this up and down, it's not going to swing, right? So let's start. We're going to go back to that slider we just put in, and we're going to edit those joint limits. And I'm going to grab my piece and let's see how far we can move it down here. Let's put the maximum min on. And let's bring it down. Let's see how far we can go. So I'm down around 10, 11. Well, when I get down around here, 11, a little less than 12, it starts coming out. So I want to be safe. We're going to make this like 11. So what we're going to do is this min right here, I'm going to make that minus 11. And that's as far as it's going to go. And I'm going to hit OK. And you can see now that if I pull this down, it's only going to go down so far, and it's going to go right back up. So my 0 is going to be right up at the top. One other thing I can show you is maybe I want this selfie stick to always be in this position. Well, what I can do is I can go back to that slider and we'll edit those limits. I can put what they call a rest position. This is the position it's always going to come back to. So I put rest, and I'll say I want that to be -5. That's going to be my rest position. I'll hit OK. So now whenever I move this, you'll see no matter where I move this to, it's going to snap back to that rest position. It's always going to come back to that rest position. So I can say that's going to be my rest position. But normally I want this all the way closed up. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to edit that joint limit, and I don't want a rest position. Or maybe I want to put my rest position and I want to leave my rest position the same as my max. So we're going to make it 0.0. So it's always going to come right back up to my max. All right. So that's how we edit our joint limits and can make things move realistically. Hope you enjoyed this video.